Hey everybody, Corey here, coming at you with another knife review video. Today, we are taking a look at the TRM knives. Adam, if you're new around here, consider subscribing, blah, 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 YouTube stuff. I kind of hesitated to release this video right after my last one because I try not to put too many, how should I say, unenthusiastic videos out there, like one after another. I don't want you guys to get depressed as you watch my channel. But my previous video was on the ProTech Knives Malibu, and I don't get it. It's good. I'm just not in love with it the way that a lot of people seem to be. And you know what? The TRM Adam, I don't think I've actually ever received a knife that I so quickly received and posted for sale. This is up for sale on like some Facebook groups right now, but let's talk about that a little bit. So for those of you who've been around for a little bit, you would know that I'm not the biggest fan of the Spyderco PM2. Contrary to the customized PM2 that I have in my hand right now. But it's just not my favorite knife. Great user, and that's exactly what I do with this. Whenever I need to actually use a knife, I take my PM2 with me, which maybe that says something about maybe I should like a PM2. But I think a lot of people kind of view the Atom and the PM2 as, each knife company's equivalent. You see, I stack them on top of each other. They're basically like the same length, blah, blah, blah. But really, the main differences between these two knives, and I think these really are like the most relevant comparisons. The TRM Atom is thinner in terms of this dimension, right? It's thinner than the PM2, comes with that deep carry pocket clip. And the blade stock is also thinner. The PM2, I believe, is 0.13 inches thick, or somewhere around like 0.125 inches thick. The TRM Atom is 0.09 inches thick, right? So in theory, as a user, your TRM Atom is going to slice better than your Spyderco PM2, right? And of course, now we have to get into like, what are you using the knife for? Do you need a slicer? Do you need something that's more robust? But for me, I got the Atom because I was interested in, one, I was interested in seeing what the hype was all about. But two, I wanted to see what a knife like this, with an aggressive grind like this, could do with a 0.09 inch thick blade stock, right? Because what I can tell you right now, even though I don't love the PM2, great slicer, right? And that's just a Spyderco thing. They do a great job with the grinds on all of their knives. So with the TRM, I said, well, it's tall and it's even thinner, so it should cut even better. And I can attest to that fact. I've taken the TRM out on, trash day. I've used it to chop up all my Amazon boxes, just a bunch of cardboard, and I can say objectively that the TRM cuts better than the PM2. Here's the thing, though. The PM2 cuts really well. The PM2 actually cuts just about as well as you would ever really need a knife to cut. And what that means is that even though the TRM cuts better than the PM2, it's not like the kind of thing that like makes your day completely different, right? Like if you were already using a PM2 and you switch to an Atom, you might go like, oh, I guess that is a little bit better, right? You can definitely tell. It just doesn't like blow your mind because you've already got a knife that cuts so well that upgrading at that point, it's really not that amazing. So I would say if you're an average Joe and you've never had like a crazy good cutting knife or a high-end knife and you jump into a TRM Atom, you would probably realize, oh, that's really nice. It cuts really, really well. But if you're the kind of person who's already a little bit into knives, or you might have something along the lines of like a PM2 or a Para 3, whatever the case might be, I don't think you're going to notice a difference enough to justify like completely replacing your PM2 with an Atom. Again, going forward, as a user, there's no jimping on the Atom. I kind of just wish there was jimping. Maybe they didn't want to do that because the blade stock was too thin. The ergos on the Atom, they're okay. I think a lot of the stock scales they're so thin. They're very flat. And there's only so much there's only so much comfort that a thin, flat scale can bring, right? And I think that's really when we start getting into the differences between the TRM Atom and the PM2. The Atom just seems more carryable, a little bit more lightweight, definitely for more delicate slicing tasks. I wouldn't say that this isn't up to the job if you want this to be your dedicated beater, but with that 0.09 inch thick blade stock and with a thinner handle, the PM2 just really feels like you can kind of do more work with it or feel more confident while you're doing that work. So that's what I'll say with this knife as a user. Let's talk about the TRM Atom as a fidgeter. Well, it's running on washers. I don't know how that just happened. Long story short, look, I'm not going to be dramatic about it. You've got a thumb stud. That's the only way that you're going to open this knife. You can slow roll it. You can flick it. It's very smooth, but it's another knife with washers, right? I mean, if you've handled the knife with washers, you know what a knife with washers feels like. It will never, ever, ever, ever drop shut unless you modify it some way that makes it completely different from what it was originally intended to do. It's just not what it's meant to do. As a fidgeter, I don't know, 2 out of 10, 1 out of 10. It's just not made for fidgeting, right? I'm not trying to crap on it in that regard. It's just clearly, it's not the intent. Nobody who's getting one of these is doing it because they want to fidget with it. So that's what I'll say as a fidgeter. As a collector, well, TRM, they're really, really, really hard to get. I got this on the secondary. I didn't even get this from TRM. They're not making enough knives relative to the demand that's out there right now, and it just makes them really hard to get. That being said, TRM themselves make a ton of aftermarket scales. Well, I guess it's not aftermarket. TRM makes other scales that you can just swap for your Atom. It's cool. It's nice. It makes it so that as a collector, I guess unless you wanted a bunch of fully assembled knives sitting around, really what you can do is buy yourself one Atom and you can start collecting scales. And then you have your blade and you swap out the scales every day when you want to, carry something else. So I think that's really cool. If you're someone who likes to chase hard to get knives, then these are just inherently good for you, right? Because they are hard to get. And honestly, the same thing goes with the scales. My buddy Tyler over at Everyday EDC, shout out, he bought a pair of titanium scales directly from TRM. And he said the scales, not even the knife, there was a scale drop and the scales were sold out in like 5 minutes. Okay, so if you enjoy chasing things and if you enjoy maybe swapping out colors and doing all that kind of stuff, maybe this is the knife for you. It kind of checks the boxes, right? High quality materials, hard to get. The extra parts for it are even kind of hard to get. I think there's a decent amount of aftermarket support, and that's usually what happens when you get a knife where, they can't really keep up with demand. But that being said, there you go. As a collector, I think it checks quite a few of the boxes. Now, I will say, personally, I think the scales are a little pricey. Especially the titanium ones. If you start collecting the scales, I mean, you're at the point where you're paying a knife's worth of money for the for the other scales that you might want to buy for this knife. So that's just something to consider. But if you want to, you can do it. There's a lot of options, and I think you'll enjoy it in that regard. As a consumer, really, there's something. Originally, I wasn't going to say a whole lot about this knife as a consumer. I wasn't, over the moon with it, blah, blah, whatever. But here's the deal. These are made in the USA, okay? And I was going to say that I feel like the knife is a little bit overpriced for what you get. And that's in any configuration that it comes in. I feel like it's a little bit overpriced for what you get. I think, don't quote me, when I looked at this one with the OD green micarta, these were like $220, okay? You've got a 20 CV blade, and you've got micarta, you've got TRM build quality, and you've got made in the USA. It's because of the made in the USA that I say, fine. 220, fine, because it's made in the USA. a lot of other companies that make their knives in the USA, they'd rip your face off even harder. Maybe put this at like 300 or something like that. So in that regard, I'm not really like offended by the price. I just say, all right, well, USA, great, okay, fine. As a knife, as an overall knife, I personally can't say that like there's enough here to pay $220 for when I could get a PM2 for like $160 or whatever it is that they go for, right? And I get it, right? Actually, the PM2 Golden, Colorado, USA Earth. Okay, I got nothing to say. Actually, I'm sorry. You know, again, for me, even if this was made in China or whatever the case might be, right? Country of origin, for what this knife delivers, there are a lot of knives out there like the PM2 that, in my opinion, they just do some things better, right? The PM2 runs on washers, but you have the option to, you know, make it drop shutty and make it fidgetable if that's what you're into. I feel like the ergos on the PM2 are better. I feel like the PM2 is just a little bit more robust. It feels better in the hand. It's got just as many, you know, aftermarket options or other options offered to you from Spyderco. And this should tell you a lot, guys, right? Because, again, if you've watched my channel for any amount of time, you know that I don't have a ton of love for the PM2. But quite honestly, when I got the Atom and I started using it, and it was supposed to kind of replace my PM2 or fill the same role, there was nothing, in my opinion, that it did so much better than my PM2 that it would ever take place of my PM2 in my collection. And that's why it just immediately went up for sale. I think you would like the TRM Atom if you didn't have knives that were similar to the TRM Atom. But in my opinion, in this day and age, you know, something like a PM2 is just going to suit your needs just as well. And you can get a PM2 pretty much any time. And you can get aftermarket parts for a PM2 pretty much any time instead of like hunting down TRM Atom stuff. So it is what it is. And then, is it girlfriend approved, right? That's my new thing. In my girlfriend's words, it feels like a cheap, poorly designed toy. That's the girlfriend review, okay? Now take that with a grain of salt. She's still in her early knife days or whatever you might want to call it. But honestly, she's handled quite a few of my knives, and she likes a lot of the ones that I like, and she dislikes a lot of the ones that I dislike. So who knows? Maybe that's insightful somehow. But guys, I hope you enjoyed this. You know, this is not like the Malibu, right? I feel like the Malibu gets too much hype for what you get. I think the TRM Atom gets, well, it's still too much hype, right? But at the end of the day, I don't view the TRM Atom the way that I viewed the Malibu. I don't feel like I'm getting ripped off. I don't feel like it's so overrated that it hurts my soul. I just feel like, again, when knives like the PM2 are as available as they are, it's hard to justify, you know, standing in line and paying more for the TRM Atom when something like this is going to get the job done. Anyhow, love you guys. See you next time.